Chapter 44:12. Who do you think you are? How dare you threaten to kill all of us? Aren't you too arrogant? A cultivator from the D family stepped forward with a mocking smile on his face. The other party did not even know who they were, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly. Besides him, D Sudong and the others also had a mocking look on their faces. The other party did not have more people than them. They were merely 4 people, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly in front of them. It was simply ridiculous. However, what happened next made them unable to laugh anymore. The other party's figure flashed and the head of the D family cultivator who had spoken fell to the ground. It rolled a few times before it finally stopped at Devao's feet. Devao's felt as if his throat was being choked by a pair of invisible hands. He could not utter a single word. The other party's speed was as fast as lightning. The D family cultivators did not even have time to react before the other party's attack ended. The most terrifying thing was that there was no sign of struggle or pain from the beginning to the end. Only his widened eyes showed his disbelief. At that moment, they finally understood that the 4 people in front of them were not ordinary people. Such a method could be considered terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen exchanged glances. In their hearts, they already knew that these people were professional assassins. Apart from professionally trained assassins, no one else could have such nimble methods and swift speed. Their actions were silent. If it had been a sneak attack, they might not even have known how they died. The other party had stepped forward openly because they did not care about them at all. In their hearts, they did not deserve to be their opponents. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen fled without hesitation. They were no match for this group of people. If they stayed, only death would await them. Devao's and the others' reactions were no different from Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's. A true expert could be judged by the way they attacked. However, their speed was slightly slower than Bailey Hongzhuang's. Everyone split into 2 groups and fled in different directions. The 4 cultivators also split into 2 groups. Since they had already made their move, they could not leave any traces behind. Moreover, such an opponent was not a problem for them at all. Even if the other party was given time to escape, he would not be able to escape from their clutches. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen fled as fast as they could. Behind them, blood-curdling screams could be heard. It was obvious that the cultivators of the D family had died at their hands. For the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang felt like she was on the run. There was a kind of panic in her heart, and all of her cells seemed to be activated at this moment. She could even hear the sound of her own heartbeat. She had no doubt that as long as she was slightly slower, the other party would directly chop off her head. In the process of escaping, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen tacitly avoided Wanyan Han and the others. They were no match for this group of people at all. No matter how many people came, they were nothing more than cannon fodder. In such a tense moment, they did not even have the time to think about who the other party was and why they had immediately threatened to kill them. They did not even know who the other party was after. With a stomp, the other party's figure rushed directly in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 44:13. Cold. An extreme coldness spread throughout Bailey Hongzhuang's body. It was a coldness that came from the bottom of her heart. The other party's sharp eyes were merciless and murderous, as if she was only his prey. The other party's lips curled into a sinister sneer, and the sharp blade in his hand attacked her without hesitation. Ding! Di Beichen's flowing light sword blocked it. Wife, be careful. His warm and mellow voice was filled with concern and he did not even have the time to say anything before he exchanged blows with the other party. Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction speed was extremely fast, and she immediately rushed forward. Even though they knew that they were no match for them, they still wanted to fight to the death. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's counterattack, the other party looked relaxed and at ease. Their eyes even carried a hint of playfulness, as if they were looking at two pets on the verge of death, and it was interesting to see their final struggle. The other party's abilities were definitely not at the Starlight realm. Even if they used all their skills, they were still no match for them. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang's body was covered with wounds. That kind of pain was nothing in the face of death. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's desperate counterattack was unfortunately unable to injure the other party. It was a kind of indescribable despair. Wife. Just as the other party's sharp sword was about to pierce Bailey Hongzhuang's body, Di Beichen's figure flashed and blocked in front of her, pulling her into his arms. Di Beichen's actions were instinctive, without the slightest bit of hesitation. As long as he was still alive, he would protect Bailey Hongzhuang with his life. Blood. Bright red and warm blood splashed onto her face, and the fishy sweet smell stimulated her soul. She did not know who the other party was, nor did she know why they wanted to kill them. They had experienced a lot of pain in the past, but they had never experienced such despair. However, looking at Di Beichen beside her who was risking his life to protect her, the blood in her body seemed to ignite in an instant. The scorching heat almost burned her to ashes. Thinking that Di Beichen might leave her life because of this, or that they might be buried underground forever, or that they might never see their loved ones again, her eyes flashed with an indescribable madness. Ah! With a hysterical cry, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt that the question in her mind that she had been unable to figure out all this time was suddenly solved. Devil's Gate. Bailey Hongzhuang's scarlet eyes were filled with madness and cruelty. The power within her body exploded wildly and a gigantic beast suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking her opponent's attack. It was a huge centipede. Its scarlet body reflected a cold light, and its hard and tough shell seemed indestructible. As soon as the crimson centipede appeared, it stared at the two cultivators in front of it as if they were delicious food. The other party was obviously shocked by this sudden scene. They simply couldn't understand how such a giant beast could appear out of nowhere. What's going on? The two assassins were completely dumbfounded. They had lived for so long and had never encountered such a situation before. This fellow can't be this woman's contracted beast, right? The other assassin was puzzled. He had seen Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly shout and this gigantic fellow had appeared out of thin air. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chapter 44:14. The two men looked at each other. Based on their powers, it should be a piece of cake for them to finish off Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bei. After all, the higher-ups had sent them here to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Otherwise, they would not have needed to deal with cultivators of this level. Previously, when they had received this mission, they had felt that it was unnecessary to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. However, the higher-ups had placed great importance on this mission so they had no choice but to come personally. However, after witnessing this scene, they finally understood that the other party was no simple character. She had actually summoned such a large creature out of thin air. It was no wonder that the higher-ups had sent them here to deal with it. They had never seen such an ability before. Di Beichen, Bai Shi, and Xiao Bai stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. They could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to summon such a large creature. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang herself was in disbelief as she stared at the large creature before her. Kill them. Bailey Hongzhuang ordered. As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, the blood-red centipede began to attack the assassins. Its enormous strength forced the two assassins to retreat. This large creature with thick skin and flesh could not be defeated in a short period of time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only glared at them. She wanted to remember their faces. She would definitely have her revenge for what had happened today. The large creature's appearance stopped the assassins in their tracks. Bailey Hongzhuang supported Di Beichen and quickly left. They did not know how long the large creature could hold them off. They could only try their best to find a place to hide. However, just as they were about to escape, the two cultivators who had been heading in another direction rushed over. "Master, what should we do?" Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's bodies were covered in wounds. They had finally found a chance to escape, but they never thought that they would be targeted by the other two. Despair spread once again. "Leader, kill them. Don't let them get away." The two cultivators who were being forced back by the giant beast could only shout from the side. They didn't expect the giant beast to be so strong. They could only be chased by the giant beast and couldn't kill it in a short time. However, they could not allow Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Ruoyan to leave this place alive. Otherwise, they would be severely punished when they return. "Wife, let go of me." Di Beichen spoke slowly, but his attitude was unusually firm. If he continued to be with Bailey Hongzhuang, he would only be a burden to her. If he stayed, at least he could buy some time. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could live, it was enough for him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored him. In the next moment, Di Beichen was sucked into Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring. The four assassins stared at Di Beichen, who had suddenly disappeared. They were dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang had first pulled this big fellow out of thin air. Now, she had made Di Beichen disappear out of thin air. Was she performing a magic trick? They looked around, but there was no sign of Di Beichen. "Bai Shi, Xiao Bai, you two go in as well." Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was solemn. Her eyes were so cold that there was no warmth in them. This was the only thing she could do now. "Master, we're not going in. Master, you and I are one. If you die, I won't be able to live either. Let's fight to the death." Bai Shi's eyes were cold and fierce. There was no fear in them. Chapter 44:15. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes reddened. An indescribable complex emotion rippled in her heart. No matter when or where, they would always be by her side. Even if they had to die. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze turned sharp again. "Good." After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, the four people's gazes changed gradually. Cultivators in the Starlight Realm were like ants to them. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's performance made them look at them in a new light. With their cultivation base, it was already very scary to be able to achieve this. Di Sudong and the others from before had a higher cultivation base than them, but they could not hold on for so long. They did not doubt that if these two cultivators were allowed to continue developing, they would definitely become terrifying existences in the future. "Who are you people?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked sharply at the four people in front of her. These four people had appeared out of nowhere, and their strength had completely exceeded their level. She was certain that they had never offended cultivators of this level. In fact, they did not have the qualifications to come into contact with people of this level in the upper realm. Naturally, they could not afford to offend them. However, the other party did not answer. "Now that things have come to this, I can no longer escape. Why don't you let me die knowing?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. The outcome was already predictable. She was fighting with her back against the wall. However, even if she died, she should at least know who killed her. "We can't tell you." The man in the lead had a cold gaze and an indifferent expression on his face. Other than a flash of surprise, his eyes were cold and inhuman from the beginning to the end. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. It seemed that the people behind them were very careful. Even at this point, they were not willing to reveal their identity. They really could not be underestimated. "Do it." The leader looked at the cultivators beside him. One person was enough to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they could not deal with this giant centipede in a short period of time, it would be enough if one of them could kill Bailey Hongzhuang. The assassin immediately attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was cold and murderous. At this moment, her body was covered in wounds. Even if she ran, she could not outrun her opponent. She might as well fight to the death. Ding! Both weapons clashed. The opponent's terrifying strength caused Bailey Hongzhuang's hand to go numb. Blood faintly, but she still held her sword tightly. Whoosh! All the power in her body erupted at this moment. It was as if everything around her had disappeared, and the only thing in her eyes was the assassin before her. The other party's methods were astonishingly sharp. There was no hesitation at all. The sword in his hand landed everywhere, aiming for vital points. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to persist for even a moment. Whoosh! Whoosh! Bailey Hongzhuang stumbled back several steps. Her clothes had long been stained red with blood. She looked disheveled and miserable. However, her eyes were as sharp as a wolf's. They were tragic and persistent. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang in this state, the assassin's heart was shaken. The opponent was clearly no match for him. Yet, she had been able to hold on for so long. This was already a miracle. Slash! The sharp blade pierced Bailey Hongzhuang's body, drawing a red line of blood. Master. Chapter 44:16. White Lion. Fresh blood blurred Bailey Hongzhuang's vision. She could no longer tell if it was blood or tears that had blurred her vision. His heart ached to the extreme at this moment, and he felt as if he couldn't even breathe. The opponent was too terrifying and cold-blooded, causing one to break down from the bottom of their heart. The white lion fell in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Its eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even at its last moment, it still wanted to imprint its master's face deeply into its heart. Die! The man's eyes were cold and sharp. He stabbed the sharp blade in his hand without hesitation. However, at that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt the dark aura beneath her feet suddenly become denser. A ray of light flashed across her eyes, which were filled with despair and agony. She used all her strength to run wildly backward. The opponent clearly did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to still want to escape at this point in time. However, given her current state, how could she escape? It's useless. The man shook his head. This kind of resistance was a joke to him. However, just as the man was about to chase after Bailey Hongzhuang, the ground beneath his feet suddenly sank. A huge force grabbed his leg and mercilessly tore it off. Ah! The man let out an earth-shattering blood-curdling scream. He never expected that a pit would suddenly appear beneath his feet. A numbing number of skeletons quietly appeared from the pit and tore the man's body into pieces before he could defend himself. In a short while, the man had disappeared without a trace. The other three assassins couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. This sudden turn of events was completely beyond their expectations. Even though they had lost one person, Bailey Hongzhuang must have lost her life since she had entered the sea of skeletons. However, they did not notice that a pair of blood-red, eerie eyes were staring fixedly at them from within the sea of skeletons. She would definitely avenge today's grudge. When Wan Yanhan and Yi Haomiao found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiao had been besieged by the Di family's cultivators, their expressions changed abruptly. There are so many people in the Di family. How could you leave the two of them there? After being reprimanded by Wan Yanhan, everyone's gazes immediately turned to Xiao Rojin. It was Xiao Rojin who had suggested coming back. Noticing the change in everyone's expression, Wan Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin with sharp gazes. This is a personal grudge between them. Why should we get involved? Xiao Rojin spread out her hands and asked innocently. Obviously, she did not feel that there was anything wrong with her approach. Hearing this, Wan Yanhan looked at Xiao Rojin in disgust. He knew very well that this woman must be eager for something to happen to little junior sister and the others. Let's go take a look. Right now, he didn't have time to settle this score with Xiao Rojin. He had to hurry over. He only hoped that junior brother D and little junior sister could hold on until they arrived. After Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao set off, Lu Yan also rushed over with people. Even though he had not interacted with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiu for a long time, they were already friends. Furthermore, they were from the same sect. How could they watch outsiders bully their fellow disciples? However, when Wang Yanhan and the others arrived, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiu. Chapter 44:17. At the thought of this possibility, Wang Yanhan could not help but clench his fists tightly under his sleeves. No way. He did not believe that junior brother D and little junior sister would die in the hands of the D family. Guilt, regret, self-blame, Wang Yanhan's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. In fact, he was the one who had killed Di Wentao. If it had not been for him, little junior sister and the rest would not have had any interaction with the D family. If they had died in the hands of the D family, he would never forgive himself. Yi Haomiao's face was also filled with anxiety. According to what they said, this should be the place. Why are there no traces? Wang Yanhan, come over and take a look. At that moment, LV Yan's voice was heard from a short distance away. Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao immediately rushed over to where LV Yan was. However, their expressions changed when they saw the corpse on the ground. I remember this face. He is a cultivator from the D family. Yi Haomiao said hurriedly. LV Yan and the rest could not help but look at each other. Since a cultivator from the D family has died, this proves that things are not as bad as we thought. Let's go and take a look nearby. Okay. Everyone spread out and searched the surroundings. However, what happened next left them dumbfounded. We found the corpse of a cultivator from the D family here. We found Devao's corpse here. We found Di Sudong's corpse here. In a short time, a group of people found the 6 corpses of the D family not far away from this place. There were only 6 cultivators from the D family that we saw previously. Now, they are all dead. The cultivator who had gone back to inform Wang Yanhan had a complicated expression on his face. Could Di Beichen and the rest have killed all the cultivators from the D family? If that was the case, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen was too terrifying. The D family had not wanted to kill them. They were the ones who had exterminated the D family. No way. Wang Yanhan shook his head with a solemn expression. If little junior sister and the others killed them, they should have returned by now. It's impossible for there to be no news at all. Lu Yan nodded his head solemnly. Indeed. Based on the distribution of the D family's cultivators' corpses, it is obvious that they fled in 2 different directions. However, they were caught up and killed. There are only 2 of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. It's impossible for them to do this. Wang Yanhan, look, there's blood here. Yi Haomiao's voice suddenly sounded. Looking at the blood trail on the ground, his heart gradually sank. Wang Yanhan and the others quickly rushed over. As expected, these bloodstains were left behind when they were fleeing. Look, there are footprints on the bloodstains. Everyone took a closer look, and it was indeed as he said. It seems that there should be a 3rd group of people here. These bloodstains could only belong to little junior sister and her group. Wang Yanhan's expression was complicated. He couldn't understand why they would encounter another group of people here. Let's search nearby again. They might not have gone far, Yi Haomiao said. Based on the situation of the bloodstains, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Sudong's situation was definitely not good. They had to speed up. Let's search in the direction of the bloodstains, Lu Yan said in a low voice. Chapter 44:18. However, as the group continued to move forward, they realized that there was an army of skeletons in the distance. The black mass of skeletons emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. Ever since they had encountered the army of skeletons, everyone had a lingering fear. Now that they had seen it again, almost everyone wanted to run away. Just as they were hesitating, they suddenly saw two black figures sweep past them. The other party's speed was extremely fast, but they were certain that the two figures they had seen were not fake. Who are these two people? Could Beichen's accident be related to the two of them? Yi Haomiao looked in the direction in which the two had left. The two of them had suddenly appeared here and were dressed in black. Even their faces were covered. It was obvious that they were going to do something shameful. Wang Yanhan also looked at the two of them. Although he did not have any evidence, he was almost certain that the two of them had done it. However, by the time they wanted to chase after them, the two of them had already disappeared without a trace. They're so fast. They're definitely very powerful. Yi Haomiao stared in horror at the backs of the two men in black. In the blink of an eye, their figures had disappeared from sight. This speed was simply shocking. That means that little junior sister and the others should be in the army of skeletons. Wang Yanhan turned around and looked at the army of skeletons. Based on the way the two men in black had fled, he could see that they were in a sorry state. It must have been because of the army of skeletons. Thinking about it, this was the only possibility that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in the army of skeletons. Little junior sister. Wang Yanhan immediately called out loudly at the thought of this. Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone called out to her, but unfortunately, there was no response. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other. Although no one said anything, they knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' chances of survival were very small. First, they had been pursued and seriously injured. Now, they had fallen into the army of skeletons. It was simply impossible for them to survive. I'll go in and look for them. Wang Yanhan refused to believe it. They had clearly been fine together. They had only been separated for a moment and the two of them had fallen. How could anyone accept this? Seeing Wang Yanhan's action, Lu Yan and Yi Haomiao hurriedly stopped him. Are you crazy? With so many skeletons, let alone you, even if all of us went there, we would still die. If they're alive, I want to see them. If they're dead, I want to see their corpses. If I don't find them, I definitely won't give up. Wang Yanhan's expression was resolute. He absolutely couldn't accept such an outcome. Wang Yanhan, calm down. Yi Haomiao shouted, if they were really surrounded by the army of skeletons, nothing would be left. Have you forgotten what happened last night? Wang Yanhan was stunned when he heard these words. Indeed, with the terrifying strength of the skeleton army, he would be torn to pieces in a short period of time once he was surrounded. They died because of me. Wang Yanhan stared at Yi Haomiao, his voice filled with hysteria. Little junior sister and little junior sister had gotten into such trouble because of him. Now that he was alive and well, but little junior sister and little junior sister had fallen, how was he going to face them? Chapter 44:19. Pain. A heart-wrenching pain. She felt as if her entire body had been crushed by a giant beast. There was not a single part of her body that did not hurt. A burning sensation spread throughout her body as if someone was calling out to her. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not open her eyes. Master! Master, wake up! Bailey Hongzhuang's body was shaken. She used all her strength to open her eyes. Xiao He was calling out to her anxiously. When she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had opened her eyes, Xiao He's teary eyes lit up with joy. Master, how are you? Nothing must happen to you. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind went blank for a moment as she stared at Xiao He. Then, her memories quickly returned. Assassin, pursuit, a fight to the death. Scene after scene flashed across her mind. In the end, she stopped at the scene of Di Baichen and Bai Shi who had been stabbed. Her expression changed and she immediately tried to sit up. However, the moment she moved, the heart-wrenching pain caused her to frown. Her body felt as if it had been filled with lead. It was extremely difficult for her to move. Even though her body was in great pain, she insisted on sitting up. She then turned to look at Di Baichen and Bai Shi. They were lying there without any reaction. Di Baichen, Bai Shi, Bailey Hongzhuang called out to them. However, they still did not move. It was as if they could not hear Bailey Hongzhuang's voice at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled when she saw this. Her bright eyes revealed a trace of fear. She clearly remembered that Di Baichen and Bai Shi had taken a blow for her. She was afraid that they would leave her just like that. Master, they're not dead yet. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with tears. It did not know why they would encounter such a calamity out of the blue. Almost everyone was on the verge of death. After listening to Xiao Hei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart calmed down a little, but she was still worried. She knew very well how serious her injuries were at that time. If she didn't receive treatment in time, it was hard to say whether she could survive. She wanted to stand up, but she had no strength. Therefore, she could only use all her strength to crawl to Di Baichen and White Lion's side. She placed her hand on Di Baichen's pulse. That weak pulse had almost disappeared, but the faint fluctuations made her understand that Di Baichen was still alive. However, judging from his pulse, his injuries were far more serious than he had imagined. She quickly took out a medicinal pill from her bosom and fed it to Di Baichen before looking at Bai Shi at the side. The White Lion's fur was now dyed red with blood, and it no longer had its majestic appearance. There was a huge hole in its stomach, and blood was flowing uncontrollably from the wound. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out some medicine and sprinkled it on Bai Shi's wound, then began to bandage it. However, the blood was flowing too quickly. She could not stop it even when she tried to cover it with her hands. Her hands were covered in blood. Bailey Hongzhuang's vision was blurry. She was on the verge of breaking down, and she wanted to cry out loud. However, she managed to calm down in the end. She understood that she could not break down now. She had to think of a way to save them. Because if they were no longer around, she would not be able to live either. Master, don't cry. Let me help you. Xiao Hei's lips trembled. Everywhere they looked was a shocking bloodstain. They had never been in such a tragic state before. No matter what, as long as there was still a glimmer of hope, they could not let anything happen to Di Baichen and White Lion. All right. Chapter 44-20. Lower Realm, Lan Family. Mu Lingbing's heart clenched in pain, and she couldn't help feeling nervous and uncomfortable. Yun Xiao, I don't know why, but I'm suddenly very worried. Did something happen to Hongzhuang and the rest? Mu Lingbing hurriedly went to find Lan Yunxiao. She hadn't felt this way in a long time. She had felt this way when Bailey Hongzhuang was in trouble. She didn't expect to feel this way again today. It truly made her feel uneasy. Lan Yunxiao's expression changed slightly at Mu Lingbing's words. He pondered for a moment before saying, "It can't be. I received a letter from Xiren saying that they went to the upper realm. Moreover, Baichen's father is already looking for them. Logically speaking, they should be in the D family by now. There shouldn't be any problems. Could it be that the D family doesn't accept Hongzhuang?" Mu Lingbing looked anxious. She had never thought that there would be such a problem before she knew about the upper realm. However, she couldn't help but worry after learning that Di Baichen was the young master of an aristocratic family in the upper realm. After all, not all families didn't care about status. It can't be. Lan Yunxiao shook his head. You've seen Baichen's father. He's not that kind of person. Seeing Lan Yunxiao's confident expression, Mu Lingbing relaxed a little. However, she still couldn't help but pace back and forth. I keep feeling that something has happened. We should go to the upper realm as soon as possible. Hong Zhuang is alone there with no one to rely on. It's too dangerous. I understand your worries. Lan Yunxiao pulled Mu Lingbing back. Hong Zhuang is our only daughter. I'm also very worried about her. Once we break through to the Starlight Realm, we'll immediately head to the upper realm. Is that all right? Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded in satisfaction. All right. With their current situation, they weren't far from the upper realm. Lan Yunxiao's eyes darkened when he saw that Mu Lingbing had finally left in peace. A woman's intuition was always sharper. It was the same situation back then. He could only hope that nothing bad would happen to Hong Zhuang. Unfortunately, in their current situation, they couldn't immediately rush to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen disappeared, Wan Yanhan and the others lost interest in exploring. In fact, after the battle with the skeleton army, everyone was already full of fear of this place. They felt uncomfortable staying here for even a moment longer. After their investigation, they found out that this demonic dragon abyss was the place where the skeleton army gathered. Along the way, they also encountered the cultivators of the Azure Dragon School. However, there wasn't much difference between the two sides. Once they encountered the skeleton army, they would definitely be in an extremely difficult situation. By the time they returned to the Raging Flames Gate, the entire team had shrunk by half. Everyone couldn't help but hang their heads in dejection, completely different from the high-spirited appearance they had when they arrived. After this incident, they finally understood how powerful the dark forces were. As it turned out, the power of darkness that they had always looked down upon and despised was actually so powerful. If a darkness attribute cultivator could find their own inheritance, then their strength would definitely be terrifying when they matured. Wan Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but hope that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were still alive and that they would have a chance to meet again. Chapter 44-21. That damn Di family. If it hadn't been for them, Beichen and the others would not have been killed. Wan Yanhan could not hide his anger. He could not accept the fact that he had been the cause of all this. Unfortunately, no matter how much he regretted it now, it was useless. Steward Wu was shocked when he heard the news. He had always planned to nurture Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He never thought that they would lose their lives during this training exercise. Cheng Zonghao was also depressed when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had died. He never thought that such an unforeseen event would happen. He had wanted to build a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and learn the art of inscription patterns from her. Things did not go according to one's wishes. Everything had been arranged properly, but something like this had happened. The happiest person was none other than the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly, Gong Tianfeng. Her future had been affected because of Bailey Hongzhuang. She could not take this lying down. She had thought that she would teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson in the future. Now that this trouble had disappeared, it could be considered as helping her to vent her anger. Half a month later. Bailey Hongzhuang had unknowingly stayed in the Chaos Ring for half a month. Beichen, how are you feeling? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. Although his face was still pale, it was much better than before. Wifey, I'm fine. Di Beichen drank the medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang gave him, the corners of his lips raised into a gentle smile. At the same time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also taking care of Baisher. We were really lucky this time. If the skeleton army had not appeared at the right time, I'm afraid we would have been finished. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. This could be considered as the heavens helping them. Otherwise, she would not have been a match for those assassins. Actually, this was not entirely luck. My wife, you had been using the power of light to attract them. Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. The tragedy from back then was still vivid in his mind. One wrong move and they would have been completely annihilated. I wonder who those assassins are. We have never offended such an existence. Why would they want to assassinate us? Bailey Hongzhuang's brows wrinkled. She had never understood this point. Even when I asked them at the last moment, they did not reveal any information. Hearing this, Di Beichen's face sank. Until now, we still don't know if they are coming for us or the Di family. The other party came out of nowhere and wanted to kill all of us without any explanation. It's really hard to determine their target. From the beginning to the end, the other party had never said who they wanted to kill, but one thing was for sure, the person they wanted to kill was among them. Chapter 44-22. According to this judgment, it's most likely to be the Shao clan, Di Beichen said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and immediately understood. It's very likely that Shao Rojin has sent news of me back to the Shao clan. They think that my appearance will affect their holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne. That's not strange. It's been many years since the upper realm has seen a light attribute cultivator with full talent. It's said that the holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne isn't really at full talent. On the contrary, you're really at full talent. Once she sends this news back, the Shao clan will most likely make such a decision. Di Beichen said in a low voice. With the Shao clan's strength, it was definitely not a problem for them to send out such an assassin. Moreover, the other party's cautious approach was indeed very similar to the style of an aristocratic family. No wonder Shao Rojin wanted to take the other cultivators away first. Perhaps this is the reason. Shao Hei's gaze suddenly sharpened. I knew that Shao Rojin wasn't easy to deal with. She's really despicable. Once the opponent is confirmed, we'll definitely take revenge. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flashed with thick killing intent. When she thought about how Beichen and Baisher had almost left her forever because of this matter, the killing intent in her heart boiled and couldn't dissipate at all. If others don't offend me, I won't offend them. Since the other party had bullied me, I'll definitely take revenge. Although the other party was very strong and they were no match for them now, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, she believed that they would definitely be able to take revenge. Di Beichen also narrowed his eyes. His thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. They would definitely take revenge. This time, they were beaten to the point where they couldn't fight back, but it would definitely not happen again. Beichen, you should rest for a while. Your injuries are very deep. Although they're almost healed now, you've still damaged your vitality. You need to rest well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen with concern. The sword strike that he had blocked for her was too deep. Furthermore, after such a long time, he had lost too much blood and his vitality was greatly damaged. In the past few days, although she had thought of ways to help Beichen heal, she still had to rest well. Di Beichen nodded slightly and said gently and concernedly, your injuries aren't light either. You should also rest well. Most of my injuries were superficial, but they're all healed now. Taking care of you and White Lion is the most important thing for me now. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at White Lion's condition. She had to admit that White Lion was indeed a beast king. Back then, he had suffered such serious injuries that she almost believed that White Lion would not survive. However, White Lion's recovery ability was also very strong. Now, his life was no longer in danger. It was just that he could not use force for the time being. White Lion, you have to rest well too. You've suffered great injuries this time, so you can't move too much. It'll be bad if you aggravate your wounds, understand? Don't worry, master. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked White Lion's warm and soft fur. She still remembered how White Lion had used all his strength to hug her and block an attack for her. It was also this warm. She swore that she would use her life to protect them. Something like this would not be allowed to happen a second time. Xiao Bai and Xiao Xuanzi were both injured. However, their injuries were not as serious as Di Baichun's and White Lion's. They had already recovered. Chapter 44-23. 7 days later. After confirming that Di Baichun was safe and sound, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came out of the chaos ring. What they saw was still a black world. Bailey Hongzhuang did not find it strange. Back then, she had escaped into the chaos ring in the midst of the skeleton army. In addition, there were teleportation arrays everywhere in the training grounds. As for where they had been teleported to, she was not sure at the moment. I wonder where we are now. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The environment where the dark energy gathered was always the same. It was very difficult to determine the direction in such a place. Go in one direction and sense that the dark energy in that direction is the weakest. We should be able to find the way out. Di Baichun said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This was indeed a good idea. Senior brother Wan Yen and the others must be very worried about our inexplicable disappearance this time. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her red lips. Just thinking about it, she could guess that Wan Yen Han and Yi Haomiao must be worried about them. I'm afraid everyone must think that we are already dead. Di Baichun chuckled. Not to mention others, even he himself almost thought that he was dead. When we go back, they must be very surprised. Just thinking about it is interesting. Her elegant red lips curled up slightly. Her pitch-black eyes flashed with a bright light. It was a blessing to have escaped death this time. However, if these assassins were really sent by the Xiao family, once we go back, they will know that we are still alive. At that time, I'm afraid that they will attack again. Di Baichun's eyes darkened. His handsome face was grave. They had to consider this problem. Let's disguise ourselves before going back. At least we have to confirm whether it is them or not. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp. If it was really the Xiao family, no matter how powerful the other party was, she would think of ways to make them unhappy. Di Baichun nodded. Okay. On this point, their thoughts were the same. Revenge was a dish best served cold, but at the very least, they had to figure out who their opponent was. The two of them continued forward. Their location was clearly rather deep. They walked for 4 hours without encountering anyone. Master, look, there's someone in front. Xiao Bai pointed not far away, her eyes filled with surprise. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichun looked at each other and quickly walked over. A man was lying in a pool of blood. There was a ghastly wound on his back, and his clothes were completely dyed red. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. There was obviously no one else in the vicinity. However, she noticed a trail of blood coming from afar. It was obvious that the man had fled all the way here. It was just that after arriving here, he was already exhausted, so he fainted here. Master, is this person still alive? Xiao Bai was secretly speechless. With such a terrifying injury, he had almost lost all his blood. Bailey Hongzhuang took his pulse and said, he must have taken some pills before he fainted. Although his injuries are very serious, he is still alive. Wake him up, and we should know where this place is. Di Baichun slowly said. Chapter 44-24. After Bailey Hongzhuang had bandaged the most serious wound on the man's back, they then turned the man over. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichun's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was undoubtedly an extremely handsome man. His facial features were as distinct as if they had been carved out. His angular face was unusually handsome. Even though his face was stained with blood and he looked a little wretched, he was still so handsome that it was impossible to ignore him. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen next to her and unexpectedly felt that the two of them were somewhat similar. Beichen, I didn't think that there would be a man as handsome as you in this world. Xiao Bai was also astonished. Ever since she had met Di Beichen, she had never seen a man more handsome than him. Many men looked quite handsome, but they paled in comparison to Di Beichen. She did not expect that this man in front of her was not inferior to Di Beichen in any way. Di Beichen looked at the man in front of him. His deep eyes lit up slightly and the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. Then in your opinion, who is more handsome between me and him? In my opinion. Bailey Hongzhuang dragged her voice and looked meaningfully at Di Beichen. Just as Di Beichen's expression gradually turned serious, she suddenly smiled and said, "Of course it's you." Di Beichen raised his eyebrows slightly. "Fortunately, this man is not a threat to me." "What if he is a threat?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. "Then I'll take you away." "I won't save him." The man's injuries were very serious. Even after Bailey Hongzhuang had helped him apply medicine and treat his wounds, the man was still unconscious. Xiao Bai's figure grew bigger and carried the man on his back as they continued forward. It was not until the next day that the man slowly woke up. When the man opened his eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his expression was obviously sluggish for a moment. He looked at them in confusion, obviously unable to distinguish the situation for a moment. However, when he noticed the wounds on his body that had been bandaged, he understood what had happened. "I am Di Xiaofeng. Thank you both for saving me." The man clasped his hands together. Even though this action tore open the wounds on his back, he still insisted. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also smiled and clasped their hands together. "It's fate that we met, young master, you don't have to be so courteous. I will never forget the kindness of saving my life." The man's expression was serious. "I will remember this kindness in my heart and will definitely repay the two of you in the future." "You're too kind." Bailey Hongzhuang took out some water and handed it to Di Xiaofeng. "You've been unconscious for so long and lost so much blood. You must be thirsty." Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng's lips were dry and his throat was smoking. He was indeed thirsty. Chapter 44-25. "Miss Lan, young Master Situ, why are you here?" Di Xiaofeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Situ Beichen suspiciously. "This is the depths of the dark forest, it's very dangerous. If you're not careful, you might lose your life. Usually, people who come here travel in large groups. It's too dangerous for the two of you to be here alone." Ever since they were hunted down, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had changed their appearances and names. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally used the name Lanixuan, while Di Beichen used the surname Situ. It was safer this way before they were sure who their opponents were. Our situation is somewhat similar to young Master Di's. We were also hunted down by our enemies and accidentally came here to avoid a disaster. Di Beichen slowly said, "You said this is the dark forest. You don't know where this place is?" Di Xiaofeng asked in surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Ever since we were hunted down, we went all the way into the depths. In the end, we didn't know where we were. So that's how it is." Di Xiaofeng understood. "Who are your enemies?" "I still have a certain amount of power in this water cloud city. Why don't you tell me and I'll help you take revenge?" "Young Master Di is too polite. We'll take care of this matter ourselves," Di Beichen said with a smile. "Situ, I don't know why, but when I first saw you, I felt like we hit it off very well. It's like we're old friends at first sight. I've always made friends based on my feelings. I believe you're a friend worth making. What's more, you saved my life, so there's no need to be polite with me. If you're too polite, it means you don't want to be friends with me." Di Xiaofeng's expression was free and easy. His handsome face rippled with a warm and bright smile, as bright and dazzling as the sun. It affected the moods of the people around him. Seeing Di Xiaofeng so honest, Di Beichen's lips also bloomed into a smile. Xiaofeng, I feel the same way. No matter what, I'm definitely going to be friends with you. That's great. Di Xiaofeng grinned, revealing his white and neat teeth. He patted Di Beichen's chest. It's hard to meet a friend in life. We can't let this fate down. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng, who seemed to have hit it off in such a short time. She was surprised and happy at the same time. Then, according to what you said, you're still not sure who's after you? Di Beichen nodded. Although I have some guesses, I can't be sure for the time being. We can only figure it out when we go back. I understand. Di Xiaofeng understood. Then I'll wait for you to figure out the situation. When you need my help, just let me know. Di Xiaofeng patted his chest as if he was a loyal friend. Di Beichen smiled. Right now, we do need your help with something. What is it? Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. Just say it, I definitely won't decline. Now I need you to lead the way. Di Beichen shrugged. He and Hong Zhuang had been trying to figure out the direction before. Since Di Xiaofeng knew where this place was, he naturally had to give this important task to him. Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. After reacting, he chuckled. No problem, leave it to me. Chapter 44-26. Although Di Xiaofeng had woken up, he was still in no condition to travel in his current state, so Xiao Bai was still carrying him on his back. When Di Xiaofeng saw Xiao Bai, he was also extremely surprised. He had never seen such a contracted beast before, and it could even change its size. It was simply too amazing. It's called the Black Light Spirit. Xiaofeng, have you heard of it? Di Beichen turned to look at Di Xiaofeng. Although Di Xiaofeng did not reveal his identity and background, according to his judgment, Di Xiaofeng's identity should not be simple. This was because there was a noble aura in his actions. With a single glance, one could tell that he was not an ordinary person. Presumably, cultivators with a strong background would know more about the contents of the book. Even now, as the masters of Xiao He and Xiao Bai, they did not know much about them. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, a trace of helplessness appearing on his handsome face. To be honest, I previously thought that I understood the types of contracted beasts very well. I have never met a contracted beast that I did not understand. However, I've never heard of this black light spirit before. It's really an eye-opener for me. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Actually, this is not strange. We only found out that Xiao Bai is a black light spirit by chance. Other than that, we did not receive any other information. Oh. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. That's interesting. You were not from Water Cloud City before. Then which city are you from? Rome and City. That is quite a distance from Water Cloud City. You left a bit too far this time. We went to train with our fellow disciples. We did not expect an accident to happen. In my opinion, after you reach Water Cloud City, don't be in a hurry to leave. You might as well stay here for a while. Situ doesn't need to recuperate from his injuries, right? It won't be too late to leave after he fully recovers. It is rare that we feel like old friends at first sight. I will not be staying in Water Cloud City for long. I don't know when we will meet again in the future. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and nodded. That's good too. Di Beichen's injuries were almost healed, but when they thought about how strong their opponents were, they were not in a hurry to go back. Anyway, revenge was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang agreed, Di Xiaofeng was very happy. That's great. After 2 days of traveling, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally made it out of the dark forest. When they saw that the land in front of them was no longer black, they couldn't help but smile. I'm finally out. Di Xiaofeng sighed with emotion. We only need to continue forward for about 6 hours before we reach Water Cloud City. Alright. When we get there, I'll treat you guys to a good meal. Chapter 44-27. Water Cloud City. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 3 walked on the wide and flat streets. This was a city that was not inferior to Rome and City. Lively hawking and bustling noises entered their ears. This kind of atmosphere filled with smoke and fire made everyone feel happy. The most famous restaurant in Water Cloud City is the Tianyun residence. The food and wine there are very good. Let's go there. Di Xiaofeng said. This is your territory. We will naturally listen to you. As Di Xiaofeng entered the restaurant, the waiter inside immediately greeted him with a smile. Young Master Di, you're here. Is it the same as usual? Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. Private room on the 2nd floor. Okay. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that it was as Di Xiaofeng said. He was very familiar with Water Cloud City and was a frequent customer of the Tianyun residence. Private room. Di Xiaofeng very considerately ordered 2 tables of food and wine. One table was for the monsters to eat, and the other table was for them to eat. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, Bai Shi, Xiao Xuanzi, and Di Xiaofeng's contract beasts were very happy to see the food in front of them. Before Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could say anything, they already couldn't help but eat heartily. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. These little guys always revealed their true colors when they saw food. However, looking at Di Xiaofeng's contract beasts, they didn't eat any better than Xiao He and Xiao Bai. At the same time, Di Xiaofeng also saw this scene and couldn't help but chuckle. It seems that we are not the only ones who hit it off at first sight. They are also kindred spirits. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both nodded. Indeed, it's rare to see contract beasts who hit it off so well with them. Haha. Di Xiaofeng laughed heartily. They eat, we'll drink. Okay. The 3 of them drank to their heart's content. They had just experienced the brink of death, and now they really wanted to relax. However, just as they were drinking happily, the door to the private room was suddenly kicked open. Immediately after, a green figure appeared in their line of sight. Emperor Xiaofeng, you still know to come back. Hearing this sudden voice, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were both stunned. In comparison, Di Xiaofeng was very calm, as if he had already expected this result. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the green-robed woman in front of her. She was about 25 years old, with outstanding looks and an extraordinary temperament. Her clothes were very simple, but they couldn't hide her otherworldly temperament. Her round oval face was flawless, and there was a trace of heroic spirit between her brows. The temperament that lingered around her was cold and distant. Clearly, she was an ice beauty. The woman clearly didn't expect that there would be other people in the private room. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, she couldn't help but be stunned. However, the frost on her face didn't dissipate. Di Xiaofeng slowly stood up, and a smile appeared on his lips. Yun Yan, you're here. I know you still care about me. You must have come to find me as soon as you heard the news of my return. I just happened to pass by. Yun Yan, I've known you for so long, and I know your personality very well. Don't be so stubborn. Di Xiaofeng clearly didn't mind the woman's coldness. The smile on his face was like the rising sun, as if it could melt the woman's frost at any time. Chapter 44-28. Hearing this, the girl looked at Di Beichen and Situ Zhangfeng indifferently and said, "Hello." Seeing this, Di Xiaofeng helplessly shook his head. Situ, Yi Xian, she is Bailey Yunyan. She is like this, don't mind her. Her surname is Bailey. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Her surname was rare. Other than in Fengbo, she hadn't met anyone with the same surname in a long time. That's right. Di Xiaofeng nodded. What's wrong? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Nothing, it's just that this surname is rare. This surname is indeed rare. Bailey Yunyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Xiaofeng, her dark and cold eyes quietly flashing with a trace of complex emotions. As a girl, Bailey Hongzhuang understood the situation very well. Just as she was about to explain, Di Xiaofeng gave her a look, causing her to swallow her words. I'm leaving first. Bailey Yunyan coldly glanced at Di Xiaofeng, then turned and left. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, aren't you going to chase after her? No need. Di Xiaofeng waved his hand, we'll eat our own food. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. She had some doubts in her heart. Although Bailey Yunyan had only said a few words, she could still feel that her relationship with Di Xiaofeng was not ordinary. Xiaofeng, if I'm not wrong, you should like this Miss Bailey, right? Di Beichen smiled. At this moment, he felt that he was even more congenial with Di Xiaofeng. Not only were they both surnamed Di, but the girl they liked was also surnamed Bailey. How interesting. Is it that obvious? Di Xiaofeng asked helplessly. Di Beichen nodded, it's very obvious. Di Xiaofeng curled his lips, then sighed and drank the wine in his cup. It's useless, she's not interested in me. Look at you, you're even younger than me and you're already married. Speaking of which, I'm really ashamed of myself. With your identity and ability, it shouldn't be a problem. Di Beichen's tone was certain. No matter how one looked at it, Di Xiaofeng was undoubtedly extremely outstanding. Such a man would definitely be favored by many girls. Sigh. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, I'm not bragging, there are many girls who like me. Who told me to like this ice beauty? I can't help it, Miss Bailey Yunyan, Di Xiaofeng, you'll, Di Xiaofeng, but as long as you work hard, you'll eventually, you will. Situ, how did you catch up with Yi Xian back then? Di Xiaofeng lowered his voice and asked curiously. Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Xiaofengs, and Hongzhuang, Xiaofeng D. S. Xiaofeng. Di Xiaofeng nodded in understanding. Actually, to tell you the truth, I came to Water Cloud City this time to chase after her. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have come here at all. Xiaofeng, with your determination, I'm sure there won't be a problem. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, however, if you didn't chase after her, I'm sure Miss Yunyan would be unhappy. Chapter 44-29. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's disappointed look, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to speak, but was stopped by Di Beichen's gaze. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was puzzled. According to her intuition as a woman, this Miss Yunyan must be interested in Di Xiaofeng, and not as heartless as Di Xiaofeng thought. Usually, if a woman with such a cold personality didn't have a good impression of the other party, she wouldn't even look at them. However, this Miss Yunyan rushed over as soon as she heard the news of Di Xiaofeng's return. She was obviously worried about where Di Xiaofeng had gone these days, but she didn't know how to express it. As long as Di Xiaofeng continued to pursue like this, it was expected that he would get the beauty. However, since Di Beichen hinted like this, she believed that he naturally had his own plans, so she didn't say anything more. After Bailey Yunyan walked out of Tianyun residence, she found that Di Xiaofeng didn't follow her. Her delicate and cold face was slightly stiff, and there was a faint feeling of bitterness in her heart. She continued to walk forward as she kept thinking about what happened before. Ever since she met Di Xiaofeng, he began to pursue her. For such a long time, no matter where she went, Di Xiaofeng would follow her. Every time something happened, Di Xiaofeng would always be by her side. Even she didn't know when she started to get used to Di Xiaofeng being by her side. It was as if when he wasn't around, her heart would feel empty. These days, Di Xiaofeng had mysteriously disappeared. At first, she didn't care, but later she couldn't help but worry. However, she sent people to inquire for a long time and didn't get any news of Di Xiaofeng. She only thought that Di Xiaofeng had bitterly chased after her to no avail and gave up on her. Today, when she heard that Di Xiaofeng had appeared in Tianyun residence, her heart was filled with joy for no reason and she immediately rushed over. She thought that Di Xiaofeng would be as mischievous as usual and even pester her, but he didn't chase after her. Thinking back to the woman in the restaurant, although her appearance wasn't that outstanding, her pair of sparkling eyes overflowed with light, bright and resplendent, making it hard for people to forget her at a glance. Not only that, but the aura that lingered around him also made people's eyes light up. Was Di Xiaofeng with them these days when he disappeared? After 3 rounds of drinking, Di Xiaofeng's mood was obviously not very good. Even when Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang tried to persuade him to stop drinking, it was useless. They could only watch helplessly as he drowned his sorrows in alcohol and finally got himself drunk. Fortunately, there were rooms upstairs in Tianyun residence. In addition, Di Xiaofeng was familiar with this place, so they directly booked a room upstairs. After Di Beichen moved Di Xiaofeng to the bed, Di Xiaofeng was already drunk and dizzy. He was still mumbling that he wanted to continue drinking. "You can have a good sleep here." Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly shook her head. She didn't expect Di Xiaofeng to be so infatuated. After covering Di Xiaofeng with a blanket, Di Beichen turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Wife, Xiaofeng's injuries haven't healed yet. Will drinking like this affect him?" Chapter 44:30. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Although Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng's familiarity at first sight was inexplicable, she understood that Di Beichen really cared about Di Xiaofeng. "His injury hasn't recovered yet, but it's gradually recovering after my treatment. Although drinking isn't good for the recovery of injuries, Xiaofeng isn't an ordinary person. His physique is very good. As long as he doesn't drink like this every day, there won't be a problem. As for this injury, he just needs to rest for a period of time to completely recover." Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded, "Then let's go back. You've worked hard these past few days. Rest well tonight." "Okay." As he spoke, Di Beichen opened the door and walked out with Bailey Hongzhuang. As the door closed, Di Xiaofeng, who was still in a daze, opened his eyes. He looked in the direction the two of them left and revealed a trace of a smile on his lips. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's room was next to Di Xiaofeng's. After entering the room, Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Di Beichen and said, "You also know that drinking isn't good for the recovery of injuries, but you still drank so much today. Xiaofeng obviously has something on his mind, so he's drinking to drown his sorrows. How can I not accompany him?" Di Beichen smiled, "What's more, my injury is no longer a problem. Although that's the case, it's better to be careful for a short period of time." Bailey Hongzhuang emphasized. "Thank you for your concern." Di Beichen's lips hooked up into a devilish smile. He reached out and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to sit on his lap. "My wife's concern for me is really cute." Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face blushed slightly. "Your injury just got a little better and you're already acting indecent. In front of you, I'm not a gentleman. By the way, why did you stop me from talking when we were eating?" Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and wrapped her arms around Di Beichen's neck. Her bright phoenix eyes rippled with doubt. "In my opinion, that Miss Yun Yan is most likely interested in Xiaofeng. That's why I told him not to chase after me," Di Beichen said frankly. Hearing his words, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly surprised. "Why is that?" "Since Miss Yun Yan was interested in him, it would be best if he chased after her. Wouldn't it be a pity to give up just like that?" Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's anxious look, Di Beichen gently scratched the tip of her nose with his slender finger. Wife, I didn't realize you were interested in being a matchmaker before. I'm too lazy to care about ordinary people. Bailey Hongzhuang puffed up her cheeks. Can't I see that you're very concerned about Xiaofeng? Di Beichen chuckled lowly. You heard what Xiaofeng said. He chased after Miss Yun Yan all the way here. Since he's been chasing after her for so long without any results, changing his method midway might lead to unexpected results. Unexpected results? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? Just wait and see. Di Beichen chuckled. They'll be together sooner or later. Maybe after this incident, they'll be together even faster. Since you're so sure, I'll believe you this time. Wife, you should have confidence in me. Otherwise, how could I have pursued you in the first place? So, you have a plan? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes and threatened, Tell me, have you ever tricked anyone before? Chapter 44-31. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked out of the room, Di Xiaofeng had already woken up. Situ, Yishuan, let's have breakfast together. Di Xiaofeng greeted them with a smile. Xiaofeng, you drank so much yesterday, but you don't seem to be feeling any discomfort today. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Di Xiaofeng waved his hand, I'm so young, I'm just drunk. It's a common occurrence in the past, so I'm already used to it. It's just that I was drunk in front of you yesterday, so I'm a bit embarrassed. I hope you don't mind. It's nothing. The three of them sat in a private room and ate breakfast. Di Xiaofeng's breakfast was also very exquisite, with a wide variety of dishes and excellent taste. You were drunk last night, so we didn't know where you were staying, so we let you stay at the inn. Do you plan to go back today? Di Beichen asked casually as he ate. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, I'm fine with staying at the inn with you. Ah. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised, you plan to stay at the inn with us? Yes, actually I'm not from Shuiyun City. You know why I came here this time. Staying at the inn is something I should do, so maybe she'll feel more at ease this way. Hearing Di Xiaofeng say, she, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen immediately understood that he was talking about Miss Yun Yan. It seemed that Miss Yun Yan's rejection for so long had hurt Di Xiaofeng. It wasn't that he didn't like Bailey Yun Yan anymore, but he felt that his love for her might have become a hindrance to Bailey Yun Yan, so he wanted to change his way of doing things. At the very least, he couldn't make Bailey Yun Yan feel uncomfortable because of his love. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly glanced at Di Beichen, but saw that Di Beichen's expression was indifferent. He didn't intend to say anything more about this. Seeing that the atmosphere seemed to have become heavy because of his words, Di Xiaofeng smiled and said, I'll be the host for the next few days and show you around Water Cloud City. It hasn't been long since you came to the upper realm, so it's boring to cultivate every day. It's good to walk around. Sure. Di Beichen nodded. There are indeed many places that we haven't seen yet. It's good to take this opportunity to learn more about the upper realm. Just in time. Let's go out after breakfast. For the whole day, Di Xiaofeng took Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang to stroll around Shuiyun City. As long as there was any interesting place or delicious food, he would take Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang to try them one by one. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was still a little worried about Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen's situation. But seeing Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen having so much fun, she simply didn't care. After this day, they were really very happy. On the way back, they passed by a cloth clothing store. Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang inside, intending to buy a few clothes for her. Wife, you don't usually have many clothes. Now that you're injured, your clothes can't be used anymore. Since we're here today, let's buy some clothes. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a deep and gentle gaze. His wife usually dressed very simply, but with her stunning beauty, just casually dressing up was enough to make people unable to take their eyes off her. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Okay. Chapter 44-32. Beichen, there are quite a few men's clothes here. You should pick a few too. Di Beichen walked to the other side of the store to look at men's clothes while Bailey Hongzhuang picked out women's clothes. Di Xiaofeng didn't need to buy these, so he stood at the entrance of the store and looked at a cyan dress. Bailey Yunyan had always liked cyan and most of her clothes were cyan. When he first met Bailey Yunyan, the first thing he noticed was her proud blue figure. Even now, that figure was still deeply imprinted in his mind. After Bailey Hongzhuang picked out a few clothes, she turned around and saw Di Xiaofeng in a daze. She noticed the cyan dress he was looking at and couldn't help but chuckle. Xiaofeng, this cyan dress really suits Miss Yunyan. You have good taste. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Xiaofeng came back to his senses and looked away from the cyan dress. His eyes flickered as he said, I was just thinking about something. No need to hide it. Why don't you buy this cyan dress and give it to Miss Yunyan? Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a bright smile, and her voice was a bit teasing. She didn't expect Di Xiaofeng to be so carefree, but in this matter, he would be so careful. Forget it. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, even if I give it to her, she won't accept it. However, a smile quickly appeared on Di Xiaofeng's face, I can't compare to you and Beichen. You're so affectionate that others are envious of you. When Bailey Yunyan passed by, she saw Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Hongzhuang chatting happily in the clothing store. The two people's laughing appearance fell into her eyes, completely flirting. Usually, Di Xiaofeng had very little contact with women. With his qualifications, there were countless women who admired him. In fact, when she found out that Di Xiaofeng liked her, she was also surprised. However, at this moment, Di Xiaofeng was chatting happily with this woman. As far as she knew, Di Xiaofeng took this woman to play around in Shuiyin City all day. Other than the person he liked, who else could it be? Bailey Yunyan's heart trembled. This result was really beyond her expectations. She originally thought that Di Xiaofeng wasn't important to her, but for some reason, this harmonious scene in front of her was especially dazzling. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was chatting with Di Xiaofeng, looked up and noticed Bailey Yunyan outside. Her outstanding temperament would be noticed at a glance. However, Bailey Yunyan seemed to have felt her gaze and quickly left in the next second. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to suddenly understand what Di Xiaofeng said. According to Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Yunyan didn't care about him at all. Naturally, she wouldn't care where he went. However, whether it was yesterday or today, it was always Bailey Yunyan who took the initiative to appear. Xiaofeng, I think I saw Miss Yunyan just now. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but look outside. However, he didn't see that figure and said, Did you see wrongly? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head, No, Miss Yunyan still cares about you. Don't give up. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's caring appearance, Di Xiaofeng chuckled and didn't comment. Chapter 44-33. I said I saw Miss Yunyan just now, but Xiaofeng didn't believe me. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged and smiled. Hearing this, Di Beichen's eyes deepened. Di Xiaofeng didn't believe her, but he did. With her personality, even if I left Water Cloud City, she wouldn't care. Why would she come looking for me? Di Xiaofeng chuckled and turned to look at the shopkeeper. How much do these cost? Seeing Di Xiaofeng change the topic, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and shook their heads. Xiaofeng really underestimated his own charm. Along the way, so many girls have been secretly looking at him. She clearly remembered that when they were playing outside today, many girls couldn't help but follow them. Many of them even looked at her with hostility. She had also felt this kind of gaze when she was with Di Baichen. However, as she became more and more compatible with Di Baichen, it disappeared. In fact, handsome men like Di Baichen and Di Xiaofeng had always been very charming. That's because he likes Miss Yun Yan very much. That's why he couldn't help but overlook this. Di Baichen's lips curved into a faint smile. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Did you do that back then too? That's not true. Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Di Baichen and turned her head away angrily. Di Baichen chuckled. I only have my wife in my heart. How would I have the mind to pay attention to others? Whether it was in the past or now, my heart has never changed. Sweet words. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips, but her mood became cheerful. She tilted her head and saw Di Baichen's serious and affectionate eyes. He was only trying to make her happy, but he was so serious. Di Xiaofeng shook his head and walked over. There's no justice in this world. I'm already so disappointed and you still want to provoke me. Poochie. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. In my opinion, even though Feng Xiaofeng is playing with us, his heart has long gone somewhere else. Why don't you go find your Miss Yun Yan? Io, it's getting late. Di Xiaofeng looked outside and said, I'm still a bit hungry, let's hurry back to the Sky Charm residence. Seeing Di Xiaofeng change the topic so obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen also chuckled. They simply didn't expose him and the three of them returned to Tianyun residence together. Night gradually fell. Water Cloud City was still very lively, and the Heavenly Charm residence was still bustling with noise. Just as the three of them were about to finish their meal, Bailey Yunyan unexpectedly appeared again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at the green-robed woman in front of them with a trace of surprise in their eyes. Obviously, they did not expect her to come directly. Di Xiaofeng was also surprised to see Bailey Yunyan. He didn't expect her to take the initiative to look for him. Yunyan, what are you doing here? Di Xiaofeng stood up and asked. Bailey Yunyan looked at Di Xiaofeng in front of her, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. Her expression was complicated. She bit her lip, her cold face showing some hesitation. Finally, she said, when are you coming back? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and said, why should I go back? In the next second, Di Xiaofeng's lips quietly curved into an evil smile. Don't tell me, you agree. Chapter 44-34. If there's nothing else, then don't stay in Shui Yun City any longer. Go back. After saying that, Bailey Yunyan didn't say anything else. She turned around and left immediately. Looking at Bailey Yunyan's departing figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at each other. It seemed that this Miss Yunyan's personality wasn't just a little cold. Situ, Yishuan, you two stay in Tianyun residence first. I'll go over. Di Xiaofeng put away his previous joking expression, and a serious look appeared on his face. Have you changed your mind? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a faint smile. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. With Yunyan's personality, she wouldn't have come looking for me unless something had happened. Now that she's here, something must have happened over there. I'll go over and see if I can help. Di Baichen nodded slightly. Go quickly. You don't have to worry about us here. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's departing figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at each other and smiled. Di Xiaofeng really knew Bailey Yunyan well. The other party had only said a few words, and he had already guessed it. This understanding and concern was enough to show his feelings. Baichen, Xiaofeng isn't here right now. Let's go buy some herbs. For the entire day, no matter what it was, Di Xiaofeng would pay for everything. No matter how much she and Di Beichen refused, it was useless, so they could only choose not to buy. Although Di Xiaofeng had always said that this life-saving grace must be repaid with a spring, and spending a little money was nothing, they treated Di Xiaofeng as a friend. They didn't want to take advantage of him like this. This time, they used a lot of herbs to recuperate from their injuries. In order to prevent any future situations, they had to be prepared first. Okay. The two of them asked the waiter and came to the largest herb shop in Shuiyun City. They smoothly bought some of the herbs they needed. The shopkeeper was a man around 40 years old. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen buying a lot of herbs in one go, he immediately became interested in chatting. Could it be that the two of you are buying so many medicinal herbs to treat that Miss Bailey? Miss Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Which Miss Bailey? Bailey Shi, Miss Shi. The shopkeeper said matter-of-factly, today, Miss Shi has already fainted. Basically, all the famous doctors in the city have gone over, but until now, there hasn't been any effect. The bounty is getting higher and higher. In the past, we couldn't tell what's so great about this Lady Shi. However, a few days ago, Lady Yun Yan, who claimed to be her elder sister, came. Now, all the doctors and alchemists in the city are hoping to cure Miss Shi. This is a big business. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Di Xiaofeng was right, something did happen to Miss Yun Yan. May I know where Miss Shi lives? Bailey Hongzhuang inquired. The two of you also want to try your luck. The shopkeeper chuckled and pointed to the door. After you go out, head east. You'll see a very lively place at the entrance. That's Miss Shi's residence. Thank you, shopkeeper. After leaving the herb shop, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen headed east. This Miss Shi is Miss Yunyan's younger sister. No wonder Miss Yunyan came to find Xiaofeng today. She probably doesn't know what to do. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood. Looking at the situation, this Miss Shi's illness is very serious. Chapter 44-35. Speaking of which, this was also because Xiaofeng did not know that Bailey Hongzhuang was an expert in medicine. Otherwise, he would have brought them over to have a look. Back when she had saved Di Xiaofeng, although his injuries were very serious, he had already taken a pill. In addition to his strong healing abilities, Bailey Hongzhuang had only bandaged his wounds and applied some medicine. Therefore, Di Xiaofeng did not know that she was a doctor. According to the shopkeeper, this Miss Bailey Shi is from Water Cloud City and Miss Yun Yan is not. However, both of them have the surname Bailey. This is really strange, isn't it? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with confusion. She had thought that these two Miss Bailey were from the same family. She did not expect that they were not. However, the two of them knew each other. She really could not understand. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, "You'll understand once you get there." Speaking of the Bailey family, her feelings were a little complicated. She did not know if the Bailey family of the past still existed. However, even if she had met the two Miss Bailey, she was still very happy. As the two of them walked forward, a courtyard in front of them was suddenly surrounded by many people. It looked very lively. I think this must be the place that the shopkeeper was talking about. It is indeed very lively. There were about 10 people standing outside the courtyard and chatting with each other. Bailey Hongzhuang also smelled a familiar medicinal scent. This Miss Shi is really strange. When I took her pulse, there was clearly nothing wrong with her. Why did she faint? This old man's pulse was exactly as you said. However, Miss Shi looked as if she had lost her soul. I only thought that she might have lost her mind. Sigh, I really don't understand. This illness is really too strange. The group of doctors stood outside the room with their heads hung low. There was only one word written on their faces: I don't understand. Listening to everyone's discussion, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood the situation a little better. Wife, the situation that they're talking about is very strange. Do you know what's going on? Di Beichen's eyes darkened and his handsome eyebrows furrowed slightly. Although he was not a doctor, the situation described by the crowd was too strange. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I can only judge after taking his pulse. According to what they said, there are actually many possibilities. I can't tell until I see it for myself. It seems that my wife has encountered a similar situation before. I have indeed come into contact with many strange patients. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Back then, in order to improve her medical skills, her old man had brought in all kinds of patients. It was because of this that she had seen so many diseases at such a young age. After they walked into the courtyard, Di Xiaofeng also noticed their appearance, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. How did you know I was here? Bailey Yunyan, who had just walked out of the room, also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Her cold face revealed a trace of stiffness as she slowly walked over. We were buying herbs earlier and happened to hear the shopkeeper talk about your situation here, so we thought of coming over to take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. I see. Di Xiaofeng understood and sighed helplessly. There's no other way. We have already invited all the doctors in the city, but there's no solution. Chapter 44-36. Bailey Yunyan walked to Di Xiaofeng's side and said, My sister has fallen into a coma. The doctors have prepared the medicine and are brewing it now. Can I go in and take a look? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Di Beichen explained, Yi Xian is also a doctor and her medical skills are not bad. You're a doctor. Di Xiaofeng's eyes widened with astonishment. This was clearly out of his expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her beautiful face rippling with a faint smile. If I knew you were in such a situation, I would have come long ago. Then quickly go in and take a look. Di Xiaofeng said. Bailey Yunyan didn't say anything and only nodded. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Yunyan followed Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan into the room and saw a girl in her early 20s sleeping on the bed. Her face was pale and she looked weak and pitiful. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bailey Shi and then at Bailey Yunyan. Although they both had the surname Bailey, they didn't look alike. After taking Bailey Shi's pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang's brows gradually furrowed. Di Beichen and the others noticed her expression and their hearts sank. It seemed that Bailey Shi's situation was really strange. After taking her pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang put Bailey Shi's hand back under the blanket and turned around. Bailey Hongzhuang's black phoenix eyes were filled with doubt as she frowned. Did Miss Shi suffer some kind of shock? Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan glanced at each other. Both of them were astonished. How do you know? So far, although many doctors had come to check her pulse, no one had said this. Bailey Yunyan and Di Xiaofeng had also not said this. Bailey Hongzhuang's words after checking her pulse really made them surprised. Her pulse is stable and there's no big problem. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to fall into a coma in such a situation. However, I noticed that she was restless and isolated. This should be a psychological problem. She does have a mental illness. Only then did Bailey Yunyan speak. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a complicated gaze. She originally thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills would not be that good at such a young age. However, she was able to diagnose something that so many doctors had failed to do. It was really surprising. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Mental illness needs to be cured by mental medicine. She just doesn't want to face it. Then what should we do? Bailey Yunyan looked anxious. Do you have a way to wake her up? There is a way, but if we can't solve her problem, it's useless even if she wakes up now. What's wrong with Miss Shi? Di Beichen asked. Hearing this, Bailey Yunyan sighed. Her expression was extremely complicated. Di Xiaofeng pondered for a moment and said to Bailey Yunyan, Yunyan, Ishuan and Situ are not outsiders. Since they want to help treat Miss Shi, there's no harm in telling them. I believe they won't say anything. Seeing Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan's hesitation, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. It seemed that the reason was very complicated. Don't worry, we won't say anything. Chapter 44-37. Actually, she, is my cousin. We've always had a good relationship. She went out to train and when she came back, I felt that something was wrong with her. When I asked her what had happened, she refused to tell me. Until one day. Everything was exposed. Bailey Yunyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen with a complicated expression, as if she found it difficult to speak. It turns out that when she, went out, she fell in love with a man. The two of them had already pledged themselves to each other. After she, came back, she waited for that man to come and ask for her hand in marriage, but he never came. In the end, she, couldn't take it anymore and went to the man's residence. When she came back, she looked heartbroken. Because this matter damaged the reputation of the family, she was punished by the family and left. She, didn't know where to go, so she came to Water Cloud City. I came here specifically to see if she had settled down well in Water Cloud City, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Bailey Yunyan sighed. She used to be a very lively girl, but I didn't expect her to become like this. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Although Bailey Yunyan's words were very vague, they both understood that Bailey Shi was most likely pregnant. She thought that her lover would come and marry her, but she didn't expect him to be a heartless man. Not only was she infatuated with the wrong man, but she was also banished by the family. Most importantly, as a woman, this blow was too great. No wonder she fell into such a situation. When I checked her pulse just now, I also found that her body was very weak. Her qi and blood were in disarray. All of these things accumulated together and attacked her heart. That's why she's in this situation. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was heavy. After understanding the general situation, she also understood how serious the blow Bailey Shi had suffered was. This kind of thing was indeed not something an ordinary person could bear. In the end, it was all because of that heartless man. If he hadn't lied to Bailey Shi and then acted irresponsibly, she wouldn't have fallen into the mire of this tragedy. Then what should we do now? Bailey Yunyan looked anxious. She also knew that this was a difficult matter. She had tried to persuade Bailey Shi many times, but it didn't seem to work. Now that Bailey Shi had become like this, if she were to remain unconscious and lose her life, she would really. I'll let her wake up first, but she's prone to depression during this period of time. You guys should accompany her more. Although the wrong person caused her irreparable damage, people should always look forward. Don't give up your life because of this. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. This situation couldn't help but make her think of her grandmother. Back then, his grandmother had also left with such feelings. Chapter 44-38. Di Beichen's handsome face was full of confidence and certainty. He knew very well how outstanding his wife's medical skills were. Even in the upper realm, her medical skills were still outstanding. Seeing Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang so confident, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but sigh in surprise. He didn't expect that the savior he met this time was actually a very powerful doctor. No wonder my injuries healed so quickly. I thought it was because my physique was good. It turns out it's because of Yixuan. Di Xiaofeng looked at Beili Hongzhuang in amazement. He knew very well how serious his injuries were before, and the speed of recovery was obviously much faster than he thought. Although he felt that it was a bit strange, he could only attribute it to his physique. He didn't expect that the real reason was here, but he had always overlooked it. Hearing this, Beili Hongzhuang chuckled, "Actually, your physique is really good. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to recover so quickly. No matter what, Yixuan, I have to thank you again. If you didn't treat my injuries, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly." Beili Yunyan couldn't help but frown after hearing this. She immediately looked at Di Xiaofeng and asked, "You're injured? When did you get injured?" Di Xiaofeng smiled faintly and waved his hand, "It's nothing, don't worry about it." However, Beili Yunyan didn't believe it. If it was just a simple injury, with Di Xiaofeng's body, there wouldn't be any problem at all. From their conversation, she could tell that the injury must be very serious. "You disappeared a few days ago. Was it because you were injured?" After connecting the dots, Beili Yunyan immediately understood what was going on. Previously, when Di Xiaofeng mysteriously disappeared for a few days, she only thought that Di Xiaofeng's temperament couldn't hold on and left. She didn't expect that something like this had happened, and she didn't know anything about it. Seeing the worry in Beili Yunyan's eyes, Beili Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and tactfully said, "We'll go out first to prepare the medicine. You guys take your time to chat." With that, the two of them walked out of the house and closed the door behind them. Beili Yunyan had always misunderstood Di Xiaofeng before, so it was good to take this opportunity to resolve the misunderstanding. "Beichen, I'm afraid we have to go to the medicine shop. There are some herbs that I don't have." Beili Hongzhuang helplessly shrugged. Although she had a lot of herbs here, she didn't have the medicine to cure this disease. Xiaofeng and Miss Yunyan also have things to talk about. Xiaofeng and Miss Yunyan also have something to talk about. They have things to talk about it, of Xiaofeng. Found D was. Of C. Teat. We went to the medicine shop to buy some herbs. Beili Hongzhuang smiled, with Miss Shi's current condition, it's better for her to wake up early. If she's unconscious for too long and falls into a deep sleep, it'll be more difficult for her to wake up. What's more, her body is very weak now and she needs to be nursed back to health. Chapter 44-39. Xiaofeng, you're being too polite. Di Beichen said, "Yi Xian and I happen to have nothing to do, so we're just buying some herbs. Since we're friends, there's no need to be so polite." Hearing the faint dissatisfaction in Di Beichen's words, the smile on Di Xiaofeng's face became more and more warm. You two are my friends. I was wrong this time, so I shouldn't be polite to you. You have to treat me the same in the future." "Of course." Beili Yunyan's eyes lit up when she heard the word, friend. Her gaze quietly fell on Beili Hongzhuang, but she found that Beili Hongzhuang's expression was calm, as if she didn't care about this matter at all. She immediately understood that she had misunderstood the relationship between Di Xiaofeng and Beili Hongzhuang. It turned out that the two of them were just friends. Thinking of this, the corner of Beili Yunyan's lips unconsciously revealed a faint smile. Noticing this, Beili Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both looked at Di Xiaofeng with deep meaning. It seemed that this misunderstanding was not only resolved, but there was also some progress. Di Xiaofeng looked at Beili Yunyan's smile and couldn't help but be stunned. The iceberg beauty's smile was like the sun in March, melting the ice and snow. It was so beautiful that it made people unable to open their eyes. Beili Yunyan saw that there was suddenly no sound and couldn't help but raise her head, only to find that 3 pairs of eyes were looking at her. Especially after noticing Di Xiaofeng's affectionate gaze, her face quietly dyed with a faint blush. "Miss Yi Xian, thank you very much." Beili Yunyan hurriedly looked at Beili Hongzhuang, intending to change the topic. However, the scene just now had been clearly seen by them, so this kind of cover-up was obviously useless. Miss Yunyan is too polite. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, her dark eyes sharp and bright. This is what I should do. Wait here for a moment, I'll go brew the medicine. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Bailey Yunyan hurriedly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said, Miss Yi Xian, let me help you. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at her and nodded slightly, okay. The two of them walked into the kitchen at the back. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the medicine furnace as soon as she entered and immediately began to process the herbs. Bailey Yunyan looked at the busy Bailey Hongzhuang, her red lips slightly opened, hesitant, as if she didn't know whether to speak or not. Although her back was facing Bailey Yunyan, Bailey Hongzhuang could still guess her expression. Miss Yunyan, if you have anything to ask, just ask. Hearing this, Bailey Yunyan was slightly startled. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang had already guessed that she had something to ask. You deliberately followed me in, so you must want to talk to me. Seeing that the other party was so direct, Bailey Yunyan no longer hesitated and immediately asked, Miss Yi Xian, did you meet because you saved Xiaofeng? That's right. Where did he get injured? Bailey Hongzhuang turned around, her bright eyes rippling with a faint smile. This kind of question, why don't you ask Xiaofeng directly? Bailey Yunyan bit her lip. I just asked him, but he didn't want to say. Chapter 44-40. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bailey Yunyan's expression changed slightly. Her clear and bright eyes rippled with a touch of light, but more than that, there was worry and guilt. After Bailey Hongzhuang finished processing the herbs, she put them into the medicine furnace and lit the fire. Seeing Bailey Yunyan fall into silence, she said, Miss Yunyan, although you and I have only just met and aren't familiar with each other, I still want to say that it's easy to find a priceless treasure, but hard to find a lover. If you meet someone you like and don't want to express yourself because of the situation, once you miss it, it'll be too late for regrets. Hearing this, Bailey Yunyan couldn't help but be startled. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. She didn't expect her to say this to her. You. Then what about you? Me? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. What about me? Don't you like Xiaofeng? Bailey Yunyan couldn't help but ask. She didn't doubt Di Xiaofeng's charm at all. In fact, ever since she met Di Xiaofeng, she knew very well how many girls liked him. Long before she met him, she had already heard of Di Xiaofeng's name. He was the dream lover of many young girls, the object of their adoration. In fact, it was very difficult for girls to not like such a man. Her friends were also very envious of her for being liked by Di Xiaofeng, but because he was too outstanding, she didn't dare to believe it. Everything was too illusory. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh out loud. You think I like Xiaofeng? Isn't that the case? Bailey Yunyan asked doubtfully. Situ is my husband. Fortunately, he's not here, otherwise it would be really interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that Bailey Yunyan's misunderstanding was really deep. You're married? Bailey Yunyan was really dumbfounded at this moment. But after she reacted, she couldn't help but feel happy. It turned out that she was thinking too much. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Although Xiaofeng is good, I only have Situ in my heart. Sorry, I misunderstood. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. Her bright eyes were filled with teasing and teasing. I understand. You're too concerned. Faced with such an appearance, Bailey Yunyan felt somewhat uncomfortable. However, she also knew that she could not hide her thoughts from Bailey Hongzhuang. Thus, she decided not to hide it anymore. When Bailey Hongzhuang finished brewing the medicine and went out with Bailey Yunyan, Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng were chatting. Seeing the two of them come out, they also went up to greet them. "Feed this medicine to Miss Shi, she should wake up tomorrow." "Thank you." Di Xiaofeng took the medicine and glanced at Bailey Yunyan. The two of them walked into the room together. After dealing with it, Bailey Hongzhuan and Di Beichen returned to Tianyun residence and promised to come back the next day to check on Bailey Shi's situation. The lower realms. When Ziren, Shangguan Yingying, Mo Yinjue, and Ao Lingxiao were walking in the training ground. "After waiting for so long, I've finally broken through to the star boundary. We can also go to the upper realms to meet up with Hongzhuang and the others." Shangguan Yingying's face lit up with excitement. Her lips curled into a brilliant smile. She was in a very good mood and even her steps were lighter. Chapter 44-41. They should already be in the D family. They must be living a comfortable life. Ao Lingxiao's eyes flashed with a bright light, but deep in his eyes, there was some worry. At first, although he believed that Di Beichen was a member of the D family, but after all this was confirmed, his heart began to worry about personal gains and losses. From the beginning to the end, he actually didn't help Di Beichen and the others much, but he hoped that Di Beichen could help him return to the D family. Thinking back to when Di Beichen and Mo Wuji agreed to help him, the condition was that he would lead everyone to the D family. Now, it seemed that he didn't need to lead the way anymore, so naturally, he didn't fulfill the previous condition. Therefore, even if Di Beichen chose to reject him, he couldn't do anything about it. When he thought of the situation in his family, the anger in his heart burned wildly. He couldn't bear this infamy for the rest of his life. He couldn't let his father die in such a dubious way. He had to go back and wash away all of this. Now, Di Beichen was his only hope, so he had to beg Di Beichen, hoping that he would agree to help him. Mo Yinjue remained silent, his deep eyes were also filled with extraordinary splendor. Actually, he had already broken through to the astral Qi realm long ago, it was only because he was waiting for Ziren and the others that he stayed until now. He regretted that he couldn't protect Bailey Hongzhuang at that time. During this period of time, the worry in his heart had never disappeared, he only hoped that he could ensure the safety of Bailey Hongzhuang when he went to the upper realm. "Ziren, since you already know that the Golden Flame auction house is under the D family, why don't you go directly to the D family?" Ao Lingxiao looked at Ziren with suspicion. Logically speaking, it was undoubtedly the most convenient way for them to go to the upper realm through the Golden Flame auction house. This is indeed the best way, but we don't know the situation of Beichen in the D family. If we take the risk and go to the upper realm through the Golden Flame auction house, it might bring trouble to Beichen. Anyway, you know where the D family is. At most, we'll just have to spend a little more time. Ziren's eyes darkened. He had been worried about this ever since he found out about Di Beichen's identity. Such a huge family was much more powerful than they had expected. Di Yujue indeed appeared to be very concerned about Di Beichen. However, with such a large family, their interests were tangled and complicated. As outsiders, they simply couldn't understand the situation. Di Beichen had never returned to the D family for so many years. Naturally, he didn't have any foundation in the D family. Not only that, there was no need to think to know that during these years when Beichen wasn't around, there would definitely be a replacement for him in the clan. Now that Beichen had returned, it would definitely affect the benefits of some people. Maybe, his current situation in the Supreme D clan was extremely difficult. As Beichen's friends, they wholeheartedly wanted to help Beichen solve some problems. If they brought trouble to him, that wasn't the result they wanted. Therefore, they would rather be a little more troublesome than have the possibility of dragging Beichen down. Hearing Ziren's words, Ao Lingxiao immediately understood what he meant. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This Ziren's relationship with Di Beichen was indeed extremely good. He actually even considered such a problem for him. If it was an ordinary friend, they definitely wouldn't be so meticulous. Chapter 44-42. Ling Xiao, you're from the upper realm. Why don't you tell us what the upper realm is like? Is it very different from the lower realm? Shangguan Yingying turned to look at Ao Ling Xiao. Among the four of them, only Ao Ling Xiao knew about the upper realm. Moreover, he had been in the upper realm since he was young. When Ziren and Mo Yunjue also looked at Ao Ling Xiao. They also wanted to know more about the upper realm. Ao Ling Xiao chuckled when he saw everyone's curious expressions. Actually, there's not much difference between the upper realm and the lower realm. The biggest difference is that the cultivators are generally very powerful. The upper realm and the lower realm are separated by power. Other than that, there's not much difference. There should be more treasures in the upper realm than in the lower realm, right? Ao Ling Xiao nodded. Indeed. Many of the treasures in the lower realm actually end up in the upper realm. With our current strength, we have to keep a low profile when we go to the upper realm. Otherwise, we'll easily attract disaster. Not only that, but when we go to the upper realm, our talents will awaken. Our cultivation methods will also be different from before. Talents awaken. Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows. His handsome eyes were filled with doubt and inquiry. Actually, every cultivator has their own talents. Those below the Starlight Realm don't know. Those above the Starlight Realm can awaken their talents. As Ao Ling Xiao walked, he explained the process and meaning of talent awakening to Ziren and the others. After listening to everything, the three of them couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that after reaching this level, the cultivation methods would be different. It was really surprising. No wonder the cultivators in the upper realm are so powerful. Not only do they have more cultivation resources than us, but their cultivation methods are also different. Shangguan Yingying shrugged. Beichen and Hongzhuang's talents are so powerful. I'm afraid they've already left us in the dust. We have to hurry and catch up with them. With their current strength, it was no longer as dangerous to walk in the training ground as before. It could be said that they were familiar with the way to the entrance of the upper realm. Along the way, they also met many cultivators, but everyone was here to gain experience. Seeing the four of them going deeper in without stopping, everyone was obviously curious. However, a voice suddenly rang out from behind them as they hurried on their way. Junior brother, junior sister, wait for me. Hearing that, the four couldn't help but stop and look back. When they saw that it was Wan Yanling, they were a bit surprised. Eldest senior brother, why are you here? Ao Ling Xiao looked at Wan Yanling in astonishment. If Wan Yanling was leading a group of people here, they wouldn't find it strange. However, it was strange that Wan Yanling was alone. When Ziren and the other two were also sizing him up. After the incident at the remains, they had a pretty good impression of Wan Yanling. Although an accident happened later on, none of them had expected it to happen. Are you going to head to the upper realm? Wan Yanling asked with a bright smile. That's right. Ao Ling Xiao nodded. How did eldest senior brother know? Chapter 44-43. When Ziren and the others came to an understanding when they heard this, but they still couldn't help but be surprised in their hearts. Senior brother Wan Yan, if we didn't happen to be going today, would you go to the upper realm alone? Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but ask. According to Ao Ling Xiao, the cultivators in the upper realm were extremely powerful. Even the four of them had to be careful. If Wan Yanling was going to go alone, the risk would be even more shocking. Looking at everyone's shocked expressions, Wan Yanling smiled faintly and said, originally, I wasn't the only one who wanted to go. However, not everyone wants to go to a wider world. Sometimes, staying in this familiar place was also a very good way to live. However, my elder brother has already gone to the upper realm. Before he left, I promised him that I would go to the upper realm to find him. Now that he has stayed in the upper realm for a long time, I should go and meet him. Hearing Wan Yanling's words, everyone immediately understood. It seemed that the cultivator who had made an agreement with Wan Yanling had decided to stay in the lower realm. In fact, during the time they stayed on Penglai Island, they also discovered that some cultivators in the Penglai Palace knew about the existence of the upper realm. They just chose not to go. Everyone had different thoughts. Some people didn't want to see the wider world. After all, after so many years of hard work, it wasn't easy to achieve such achievements in the lower realms. Once they went to the upper realms, it would be tantamount to starting all over again. Many people no longer had the same fighting spirit, so staying in the lower realms wasn't necessarily a bad choice. Senior brother Wanyan's elder brother should be the previous senior brother of the Penglai Palace, Wanyan Han, right? When Xiren looked at Wan Yanling, they also knew about Wanyan Han's name. Even though Wanyan Han was no longer here when they came to the Penglai Palace, they could often hear Wanyan Han's name from the cultivators who came here. It was said that this senior brother was a person who valued friendship and loyalty. It was because of this that everyone had a deep impression of him. However, as Wanyan Han's younger brother, Wan Yanling was also not bad. Both of them had achieved results that ordinary practitioners simply could not achieve in the Penglai Palace. Senior brother, let's set off together then. It's our first time in the upper realm. We can take care of each other if we're together. Xiren said with a smile. Wan Yanling smiled and nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Senior brother, you're too courteous. With your cultivation, I'm afraid you'll have to take care of us. Everyone chuckled as they walked forward. Although everything in the upper realm was unknown to them, they were still filled with hope. Early the next morning, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen headed to Miss Shi's residence. As soon as the two walked in, Di Xiaofeng noticed them and smiled brightly. Situ, Yixuan, you're here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile. They noticed that the doctors outside had already left, and the notice on the door had been taken down at some point. Yixuan, I'm really convinced by your medical skills now. Chapter 44-44. With you here, we don't need to look for other doctors. Your medical skills are much better than theirs. Di Xiaofeng's black eyes flashed with surprise and joy. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had made a solemn vow yesterday, because her performance was too relaxed, he couldn't help but feel a little worried. He didn't expect that when he was still resting this morning, Bailey Yunyan's surprised voice could be heard. Bailey Shi had woken up. It was only at that moment that he truly understood that Lan Yixuan's medical skills weren't ordinary. This level of medical skills was definitely at the level of a master. Di Beichen chuckled. I already told you yesterday, but you didn't believe me. My wife's medical skills aren't just for show. When we were in the lower realm, countless people wanted to see my wife, but she didn't have the time. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen's proud expression as he introduced her. Her lips curled into a bright smile. Her husband was getting better at praising her. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Yes, yes, yes. I firmly believe in this point now. So many doctors came and discussed the solution, but after so long, they still didn't have a clue. To be honest, Yunyan and I have been thinking of all the solutions we could think of because of this problem. We didn't expect to find a solution so easily. It seems that I really did obtain a fortuitous encounter when I went to the dark forest last time. The reason why he went to the dark forest was because he heard that there might be some special and precious herbs there that might be helpful for Bailey Shi's illness. But he didn't expect that not only did he not find any herbs, he was even ambushed and almost lost his life. He thought that he had gained nothing, but he didn't expect his savior to be such a skilled doctor. This was really a turn of events. Is Miss Yunyan taking care of Miss Shi inside? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Although Miss Shi has woken up, her emotions aren't very stable. Yunyan can only watch over her, afraid that she will do something stupid. Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. I'll go in and take a look. Di Xiaofeng was about to follow them in but was stopped by Bailey Hongzhuang. It's better to let me and Yunyan deal with this kind of thing. You guys should obediently stay outside. Otherwise, you'll only provoke her more. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that what Bailey Hongzhuang said was indeed very reasonable. When he turned his head, he found that Di Beichen had been standing in the same place all this time. He had no intention of going in to take a look. Noticing Di Xiaofeng's expression, Di Beichen just spread out his hands. The expression on his face showed that he had already expected this situation. The faint smile between his brows looked like he was mocking Di Xiaofeng. Di Xiaofeng glared at him. This guy had already guessed it, but he didn't tell him, causing him to hit a wall. Knock knock. Bailey Hongzhuang stood outside the door and knocked. Inside the room. Bailey Shi looked outside the room. Her pale face was filled with worry and nervousness. Cousin, don't worry, it should be Miss Yixuan. Chapter 44-45. Seeing Bailey Shi like this, Bailey Yunyan couldn't help but hug her. I know you're in pain, but you can't give up on life because of this. You just misjudged him, it's him who betrayed you, it's his fault, why do you have to pay with your life? Bailey Yunyan's eyes were burning with rage. That heartless man is nothing. He should be the one to suffer, not you. If you lose your life because of him, then it's not worth it. Miss Yi Xian is a good person, if she didn't find a way to wake you up yesterday, I really don't know what you would be like now. Let her in first, okay? Bailey Hongzhuang stood outside the room, vaguely able to hear the conversation inside. She understood Bailey Shi's complex emotions, so she wasn't in a hurry and just waited outside the door. She didn't need to think to know that Bailey Shi's emotions were definitely not calm. If she rashly went in and agitated her, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. After a while, Bailey Yunyan's voice sounded, please come in. Only then did Bailey Hongzhuang enter the room. Looking around, she saw Bailey Shi curled up on the bed, her face buried deep. Bailey Yunyan was sitting next to the bed, her pretty face filled with helplessness and pain. She exchanged a glance with Bailey Yunyan, then spoke, Miss Shi, I am Lan Yi Xian. Bailey Shi, who had her head buried, only made a sound of acknowledgement. Her voice was low and soft, clearly not like she was speaking. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang took a stool and sat down beside the bed. Miss Shi, I am a doctor, how about you take out your hand and let me take your pulse? Bailey Shi slowly took out her hand, and Bailey Hongzhuang took the opportunity to take her pulse. Miss Yi Xian, how is my sister's situation? It's about the same as what I said yesterday. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed, her body is weak, and she hasn't recovered from her previous losses, and now she's immersed in grief all day. If this continues, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head, and Bailey Yunyan immediately understood. Pull yourself together, don't give up hope because of this. Bailey Yunyan spoke up. However, Bailey Shi only lowered her head and didn't say a word, clearly her heart was already dead. Gunyang, in fact, you didn't do anything wrong. You just trusted the wrong person. It's a pity that you gave up your life because of this. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, I've also encountered a situation like yours. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bailey Shi raised her head and asked, "Is there anyone else who's been like this?" Seeing Bailey Shi's eyes suddenly light up, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Yunyan glanced at each other before continuing, "The world is big, and there are different things happening every moment. Naturally, this kind of thing can't only happen to you, what?" Bailey Yunyan slowly walked out of the room. Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't come out with her, and they were a bit puzzled. "Yunyan, why did you come out by yourself?" Di Xiaofeng asked, puzzled. Bailey Yunyan smiled. "Miss Yixuan is truly a wonderful person. My words are not as effective as hers. Her comforting words are clearly much more effective than mine. I might as well come out and let them have a good chat." Chapter 44-46. It was obviously not a simple thing to let a stranger believe in you, but this situation was not so difficult when it came to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Yunyan thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was a stranger to Bailey Shi, but she didn't expect that with just a few words, Bailey Shi would believe her so much. In fact, it wasn't just Bailey Shi, even she had an inexplicable feeling of trust when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang. This was a woman with magical power. Hearing Bailey Yunyan's words, Di Xiaofeng nodded with a smile, "Miss Yi Xian is indeed a good girl." He also had to admit that, in fact, whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Beichen, they both made him feel very comfortable at first glance and wanted to communicate with them. It seems that this heavy responsibility will be placed on Miss Yi Xian. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. After seeing Bailey Yunyan go to the kitchen, he put a hand on Di Beichen's shoulder and teased, "Situ, your eyes are really good. You found such a treasure. Many people praise me." Di Beichen replied. "You really don't know what modesty is." Di Xiaofeng was helpless. He thought that Di Beichen would at least be modest, but he didn't expect him to admit it so calmly. "You already know that this is the truth. If I pretend to be modest, wouldn't it be hypocritical?" Di Beichen spread his hands. His wife was impeccable. "You're good." Bailey Hongzhuang went in for a long time. Even though Bailey Yunyan had already prepared lunch, she still didn't dare to disturb them. It wasn't until a moment later that Bailey Hongzhuang came out. "Miss Yi Xian, how is my sister?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Bring the food in for her to eat." "She's willing to eat." Bailey Yunyan was surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "She hasn't had a good meal recently. Let her have some porridge first. As for who that man is, since she doesn't want to say it, then don't ask. One day, she will be willing to say it herself." Hearing this, Bailey Yunyan wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she nodded. Okay. She just wanted to know who that irresponsible heartless man was. That way, she could think of a way to get justice for her little sister. Unfortunately, Bailey Shi wasn't willing to say anything, making her anxious to death. After Bailey Yunyan entered the room, Di Xiaofeng walked over and said, "Why don't you ask who that man is? If it wasn't for that man, Miss Shi wouldn't have fallen to such a state today. Actually, if I think about it carefully, someone who can catch Miss Shi's eye is definitely not from an ordinary family. Moreover, how could an ordinary man dare to let Miss Shi down? This was a great opportunity for him to climb up the social ladder. After eliminating this possibility, there weren't many possibilities left. She doesn't want to say it. On one hand, she feels embarrassed. On the other hand, she might still have a trace of hope for that man." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was heavy. After talking with Bailey Shi, she felt that this girl was very pure. It was because she didn't know much about the world that she was deceived. She had almost given up everything for this relationship, and this result was really beyond her ability to bear. Chapter 44-47. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Xiaofeng had a look of disbelief. I didn't hear wrong, right? That man already treated her like that and she still has a glimmer of hope. AI, you men might not be able to understand. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. We all think that man is despicable and we know that he was lying to her from the beginning. However, that man is the only person she has ever liked. Think about it from her perspective. Lady, she isn't a bold person, yet she was able to do this for him. It can be seen how deep her feelings for him are. Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen looked at each other and instantly understood. As expected, a woman could understand a woman's feelings the best. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang only went in once and Bailey she was willing to eat. In comparison, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan's persuasion was a bit too extreme. No wonder it didn't have a good effect. Step by step. She won't be able to let go of her heart in a short period of time. However, as long as she doesn't have any thoughts of suicide, she will slowly walk out of it. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. You're right. If we keep forcing her like this, it will only make her go into a dead end. Why don't we give her more time and let her slowly think it through? This is a process that requires patience. I can help her heal her body and nurse her back to health. However, she will need to slowly think through this heart of hers. Her clear eyes were filled with concern. She could only do this much, but she believed that Lady Shi would let go of everything sooner or later. When the day comes when Lady Shi is willing to say the other party's name, she would have already let go of it. Not long later, Bailey Yunyan walked out of the room with a look of surprise on her face. Lady Yi Xian, you're really amazing. You only talked to my sister for a short while and she's already in a much better state. Although it can't be compared to before, her eyes are starting to regain their luster. I'm really grateful to you. Bailey Yunyan said emotionally. You're too polite. We're friends, and I'm happy to be able to help you. Do you think she will still take things too hard? Bailey Yunyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She now felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was really a genius doctor. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it and shook her head. I don't think she will. It's just that she was first betrayed by a heartless man and then expelled by your family. It was a big blow to her. Right now, she really needs company. If you have time, you should spend more time with her. It's good to walk around with her, but don't ask too much about what happened before. She'll naturally tell you when she figures it out. Bailey Yunyan nodded. I understand. I will write a few prescriptions. On the one hand, it will be used to treat her previous weakness. On the other hand, she needs to recuperate. Although this kind of mental illness wasn't a real illness, it still caused a lot of damage to the body. After her body recovers, she won't feel so uncomfortable anymore. Maybe her mood will be better. Then I'm really grateful to you. Bailey Yunyan's eyes blossomed with splendor. She really didn't expect the heavens to send such a helper. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't appear, they really wouldn't know what to do now. Chapter 44-48. After dealing with the problem, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't stay in the courtyard for long. They had done everything they could. This kind of problem couldn't be completely solved in a short time. After all, they were outsiders. It was fine to stay here. It would be more comfortable to stay in the restaurant. Then you guys can rest in the elegant sky residence. If there's anything, come find me directly. Di Xiaofeng urged. Don't worry, we'll be fine. After walking out of the courtyard, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't plan to go anywhere else. They went straight to the elegant sky residence. Ever since the incident in the demonic dragon abyss, we spent most of our time healing and didn't cultivate properly. Let's take advantage of this time to break through and increase our cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. Last time, in front of the 4 assassins, they didn't have the power to fight back. It was obvious how powerful their opponents were. Since they were still alive, once the other party knew about this, they might come looking for trouble. Moreover, they had already made up their mind to take revenge. Therefore, increasing their strength was the most important thing now. Di Beichen's eyes darkened. That's right. Let's go into closed-door cultivation after we go back. Strength was the foundation of everything. If they didn't have enough strength, even if they found an opponent, it would be very difficult to take revenge. Xiren and the others were very fast. Last time, he and Shangguan Yingying saw the other party leave with their own eyes. They had already memorized the entrance to the upper realm clearly. During this period of time, they had been hoping to enter the upper realm as soon as possible. This time, they really could go. Their speed was extremely fast. The 5 of them smoothly passed through the skeletons and arrived at the entrance to the upper realm. Standing in front of the entrance, the 5 of them looked at each other. Then, they smiled at each other and walked in together. The world spun. When they saw everything in front of them again, they were already in another place. Looking at the entrance behind them and the completely different scene in front of them, they knew that they had successfully reached the upper realm. This is the upper realm. Shangguan Yingying's eyes sparkled with excitement. It's quite fast. The teleportation array is really useful. When Xiren and the rest had faint smiles on their faces. They had finally arrived at the place they had been waiting for. Ao Lingxiao looked at everything in front of him. His gaze was deep and complicated. Back then, he'd been forced to leave the upper realm and hide in the lower realm. Yet now, he'd finally returned. After such a long time, he didn't know what had happened to his family. However, he would definitely find a way to reveal the truth to the world. His hands under his sleeves gradually clenched into fists. The enormous strength caused his knuckles to turn white, but it was still not enough to express the hatred in his heart. Let's go out. Mo Yunjue reminded everyone. Hearing this, Ao Lingxiao and the others recovered from their thoughts and walked out together. Walking on the bustling street, everyone looked at the bustling scene and felt joy in their hearts. Chapter 44-49. When Xiren, Mo Yunjue, and Wan Yanling were also observing their surroundings. However, what they noticed more was that the auras of the people around them were extremely powerful. It was impossible to see such a scene in the lower realm. The situation was just as Ao Lingxiao had said. The cultivators in the upper realm were generally very powerful. With their strength, they could do whatever they wanted in the lower realm. However, they were just ordinary people here. I noticed a few very powerful auras just now. The cultivators here really can't be underestimated, Mo Yunjue said slowly. Xiren nodded slightly. We still have to keep a low profile. Don't offend people casually. Otherwise, once we get into trouble, it'll be really bad. Hearing you guys talk like this, I'm a little worried. Previously, when Hongzhuang and Beichen came to the upper realm, it was just the 2 of them. It was quite dangerous, Shangguan Yingying said emotionally. Beichen and Hongzhuang are both smart people. They definitely have the ability to protect themselves. Xiren patted Shangguan Yingying's shoulder. His cultured and elegant face was filled with relief. You're right. Hongzhuang and Beichen are both very resourceful. When we first arrived at Penglai Island, if it wasn't for the 2 of them, it would have been very difficult for us to escape. Even though quite some time had passed, she could still remember everything clearly until now. At that time, she thought that they wouldn't be able to escape the heaven-shaking faction's pursuit. However, she never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would be able to turn the tables on them. This is Water Cloud City. After Ao Lingxiao asked a few questions, he already knew where they were. Coming from the lower realm to the upper realm is a random teleportation. There are a total of 8 cities. Junior brother D and the others could have arrived at any one of these 8 cities. However, they should be at the D family now. Let's stay here for today. Everyone can also look around and familiarize themselves with the environment of the upper realm. When Xiren and the others nodded. Their goal in coming to the upper realm was to meet up with D Beichen and the others as soon as possible. Junior brother Ao, can you tell me a total of 8 cities? I'm going to find my brother. Currently, I don't know which city he is in. I might have to go to a few more places, Wan Yanling said with a smile. Hearing this, Ao Lingxiao reacted and hurriedly said, no problem, these 8 cities are Water Cloud City, Rong, and City. Since senior apprentice brother Wan Yan wants to gather information, why don't we gather some information in Water Cloud City first? Maybe we're lucky and eldest senior brother is here. Sheng Guaniying raised her eyebrows slightly. Although she often heard about Wan Yan Han, she had never seen him before. If she could see eldest senior brother's heroic figure before she left, it would be pretty good. No need. Wan Yanling smiled and waved his hand. You must be tired from rushing all the way here. Let's find a place to rest first. Senior apprentice brother Wan Yan, we're from the same sect. Naturally, we should take care of each other when we're outside. You don't have to be so polite. When Xiren laughed and said, actually, we're not tired yet, right? Mo Yinjue and Ao Lingxiao both nodded. If it was in the past, it might have been a bit tiring for them to pass through the training grounds. However, it was much easier now. That's right. Let's gather information together. We can also find out if Beichen and the others were here before. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.